I didn't hear back. I called and didn't hear back. I checked in and I didn't hear back.
That was all the question was.
And then and even now your question is undergirded by incredulity. How could you check in and not hear back? Because you can call somebody and they didn't call you back yet. It's not that wild of a take. That's not a stretch. I really don't know the whole I don't know the whole story. You know what I mean? And so I don't want to make light of it. I'm not taking anything away from that joke, but because I don't know what's going on about how serious it is, I'm reluctant to engage that just because I really don't know what's going on. And I don't know if it's super bad, super good, if it's light, if it's easy. I just don't know. And so I don't want to speak to it in that way because I just don't know. I want to be clear though. There's not like a conspiracy going on. I just don't know.
Where is Melyssa Ford?
I don't know. And in a real honest answer, with everything that I've been dealing with in my own personal life, I don't come on here and I don't try to like get y'all to like sympathize with it or anything. I don't care what's going on with everybody else.
When's the last time you spoke to her?
I don't care enough to have to explain to y'all, but I've spoke to her through text and I checked on her and she good.
Recently?
Mm-hmm. Yo, in all honesty, and maybe it's just different for me, I respect the fact that when people or whoever's going through whatever, whether I know or not, I want to give them that space to go through whatever they're going through on their own. And then when they're ready to confide and do whatever they need to do, they can do so. So it's not my place to speak about a person or what they're going through. I'm not a decision maker or anything like that up there, and I don't speak to anybody up there in that level of needing to know. So I don't know. I don't know nothing that's going on.
Emanny and Marc Lamont Hill discuss Melyssa Ford's absence. Yes, exactly. During Marc Lamont and Emanny's conversation with Joe Budden Podcast listeners last week on Spaces, Melyssa Ford's name was eventually mentioned. Now, they both kind of adopted the same I don't know what's going on stance. However, their remarks do, in my opinion, provide some insight into how serious the situation is and how nobody can make light of it or understand what is happening, which suggests that even the Joe Budden Podcast and the network's top brass aren't truly informing everyone. Like, they're not telling them, oh, Melyssa Ford is coming back. Melyssa Ford is only acting in this way since the reality is likely a little hazy and would suggest that she hasn't been informed about Joe Budden or Ian. Thus, Emanny reports that he has been communicating with Melyssa Ford. Although he claims to be unaware of the situation, he has, as you know, been in contact with her. Since he isn't expressly inquiring as to why she isn't there, I think that he is simply checking in to see how she is doing. The person on the other end, Marc Lamont Hill, then states that he checked in with her but that she did not respond. That gives a lot of leeway for interpretation as to whether she simply didn't respond to him because she wasn't responding to him or because it had only been a few moments. What I do know, however, is that Marc Lamont Hill mentioned that less than 3 or 4 weeks ago, he was conversing with her and they discussed the entire matter of looking for an acupuncturist or something similar. However, he would later claim that he hadn't spoken to her since that incident, which intrigued me because it seemed like they had great chemistry and frequently checked in. I would argue that the situation has reached a critical point now that Mona and Sasha are present because everything that may go wrong during a split is happening right in front of us. The recipes seem like a story we've seen before, don't they? After a strange and acrimonious last moment, Melyssa Ford disappears from the scene. She stops posting anything on social media. You know, even the Hot and Bothered page doesn't have a podcast or hasn't had one in a long time. On top of that, she would post the hospital pic, which was really strange and offended a lot of people. Many people were questioning what the point was, even though some felt sympathetic because it didn't go into much detail, and some thought it was a publicity stunt. Thus, it appears that a strange combination of factors is driving Melyssa Ford's departure, as seen by all the outsiders looking in, the show's followers, and I believe even those who were present. There are many things that have changed while she's been gone, even if she returns. Additionally, has Melyssa Ford addressed the issues that previously infuriated Joe Budden? Things like being a bit of a party pooper and refraining from talking about specific Patreon themes. She would shut people off or exclaim, "Aw, you guys get on my last nerve," whenever she didn't like a situation. As I have stated, that does not necessarily represent Melyssa Ford. Since Joe Budden enjoys creating drama and cutting people off is one of the show's strategies, you can see it with Flip, I do think the Joe Budden podcast can be rather difficult to work on at times. It appears as though Mona received the order while she is currently on the show. Hey, stop Flip. Put him in an awkward situation. Then there was the entire Ish and Sasha scenario.
Recall that during an episode of The Patriot, Joe would kind of interrupt Ish whenever she spoke, saying something like, "Hey, Ish is being really strange." Because of the terrible guys, Ish is acting strangely around Sasha. The villains are present. He doesn't behave that way, yo. Melyssa Ford may have been acting strangely on the show for a variety of reasons, but ultimately, I am positive that Joe Budden will be angry if she doesn't speak on the platform. Additionally, he now has a few individuals who directly answer for Melyssa Ford's shortcomings. Correct. Mona never stops talking. Even though she was only there for a single day, she completed 2 episodes. Additionally, it's evident that even though she has Amick syndrome and talks constantly, she will not tolerate silence. Joe will simply need to ensure that she doesn't stray from the topic at hand, which she is fully capable of doing. But sometimes, Melyssa Ford would have the screw face on, go silent for extended periods of time, and give the entire studio a strange vibe. No one else on the show, in my opinion, accomplished it either. Actually, I believe that someone else carried out that action. The Queen's flip was much the same. He would simply approach it differently. Ice would do it, but not as much as Ish would. They wouldn't remain silent for very long, you know? They would be able to relate to whatever was happening on the show. They would continue to talk. However, Melyssa Ford and I had a different experience altogether. However, please share your thoughts on the remarks made by Emanny and Marc Lamont Hill. It seems to me that Melyssa Ford's tenure on the show is coming to an end, and that's not necessarily a terrible thing. Melyssa Ford might benefit greatly from it. Additionally, a lot of people will ask, why are you so concerned? We are concerned for a number of reasons. Melyssa Ford is arguably the second most well-known guest on the Joe Budden Show ever. Because of her vixen years in the mid-2000s, such as 2003, 2004, and 2005, everyone has a general idea of who she is. As a result, many people genuinely care about her story. In addition, she has contributed significantly to the show's viral success by turnkeying several of its moments. For example, there was a video of her discussing a gender war issue, and it became viral. The way comedians responded to it simply demonstrates how well known she is in relation to that program, and how long she has been on the podcast. In the Joe Budden podcast history, 3 years is a long time. The duration of the show is 10 years, and 30% of the time it lasts is 3 years. And then if you compare the patron episodes to like the Rory and Mal era, you see all of the other work that has emerged from that voids, and she's actually produced about 5 or 6 years worth of content. However, please share your thoughts with me. Marc Lamont Hill seems to be saying there isn't a cover-up. I'm not sure. There seems to be a hush-hush injunction in effect. And even while there might not be a conspiracy, I do believe that money is being spent to ensure that not everyone is aware of what is happening. And the reason for this is that everyone is attempting to steer the conversation. I believe Melyssa Ford is attempting to steer the story. Since it's another woman struggling on the Joe Budden Show and the optics for him are a little delicate, I believe Joe Budden is afraid of how this will turn out. Check out Mandy. Her words. Will Melyssa Ford depart and begin disparaging the network in the same way that Mandy did? Everything is possible. Okay, everyone, don't forget to follow me on Patreon. The passages from these discussions were recorded there. These 2 discussions were incredibly interesting. Emanny talked about how many subscribers he received during his time on Patreon. Oh, after that, Marc Lamont Hill appeared and amusingly mocked another space member.